Good afternoon, good morning, and good night, and welcome to Cosmic Complexity. I'm your host, Grayson Off, and this is...
Yeah, and I'm Trent Messer.
What is going on? How are you guys doing?
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We are trying to get the intro down a little bit better because we have so many new things we're learning. We were also trying to figure out what to call you guys. Cosmic Tears was one of them.
Yeah.
What were you?
Cosmic Wanderers.
Cosmic Wanderers was one of them.
Yeah.
I kind of like Cosmic Wanderers. Was that one I said?
Good. Yeah, I think you said that one.
I like that, but whenever this comes out in July, make sure to leave a comment which one you like, and
or any new suggestions.
Give it a good couple of months, and we'll start calling you that. So I think we're at a 4-month advance right now. So
something like that.
In about 4 months, we'll call you whatever you decided. we might just pick one, and that's what you deal with.
Yeah.
That's what you... I think Cosmic Wanderers, we might stick with that.
Yeah.
But, so today, we were kind of going back and forth on topics and what we wanted to talk about. We had several topics, and one of them was demons and angels. And we were going to book them in one episode, but I think that demons and angels are two very big subjects to talk about, and I think they're very unique, and they both should deserve their own episode of space to talk about. So today we're going to be strictly talking about demons, and Trent pulled up a article on, is it Ligonier?
Yeah, it's R.C. Sproul's kind of ministry. Obviously,
Cool.
R.C. Sproul has passed away, but his ministry still continues on. So this is just their website, and we found an article written by a Barry Cooper, which I've never heard of him, but
yeah, we don't really know anything about this guy.
Yeah,
but
we didn't read the whole article because we wanted to react to it live.
I didn't read it.
But I just kind of looked at it just to make sure it'd be kind of what we're wanting to talk about, and I think it'll be an interesting article. So
I haven't heard this article. Trent has read some of it.
Like the first 2 paragraphs, maybe.
It's a 6-minute long article, so we're going to start off by listening to the reading of it, and then we will share what we think about it. We'll also probably stop in the middle of it. This is kind of a new idea that we came up with just now. So if you hate it, let us know. But I think we should just get into it. I don't think we need to prolong anything else.
Yeah,
Trent, do you want to talk about anything?
No, I don't think so. I think we're just
cool.
going to get into the article.
All right, cool. So this is Barry Cooper's Demons.
I once worked on an evangelistic series that was designed for modern, mostly non-religious people. It was based on Mark's Gospel, and that was a deliberate choice because Mark was writing to Gentile converts, so he goes to the trouble of explaining Jewish culture. Exactly the kind of thing that many 21st century non-religious Westerners would struggle to understand. In many ways, then, Mark is the perfect starter gospel for those who are coming to the Bible for the first time. But the more...
I don't know what happened here.
Oh.
Barry?
Where'd you go, Barry?
We lost Barry.
Well.
I don't know what to do about this. Hold on now. I'm going to reload the page. I'm going to reload Barry real quick. I think Barry might have got a little frog in his throat. Might get Barry some time.
He's never been on a podcast before. He's still nervous.
I think Barry was just a little bit nervous today.
I once worked explaining Jewish culture.
All right,
exactly
Barry.
the kind of thing
Barry,
that many 21st
yourself.
We've heard this, Barry.
Barry, start something new, all right?
Starter gospel for those who are coming to the Bible for the first time.
There you go, Barry.
But the more we studied Mark, the more we noticed that he keeps insisting on something that seems at odds with this user-friendly approach. Something that even many religious people, let alone non-religious people, struggle to accept. And he makes it a central part of his narrative. Again and again, Mark insists on the reality of demons. Embarrassingly enough, it's right there in Mark's very first chapter. That evening at sundown, they brought to Jesus all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. So, this is all a bit awkward. According to the gospel writers, Jesus clearly recognized the reality of demons, that people could be oppressed by them. And Jesus spends a lot of time in Mark's Gospel casting them out. As we saw in another episode of Simply Put, the one about Satan, it can be tempting to discard Jesus' view as being merely a product of its time. But it's salutary to remember that Jesus was never one to go with the cultural flow. And if we do see Jesus' talk of demons as being merely a product of its time, isn't it possible that our disbelief in them is merely a product of our time? Certainly, the biblical testimony about demons is clear and unapologetic. Demons are angels who fell with Satan, who was, of course, an angel himself. They were those who had taken sides with Satan in his rebellion against God. Talk about being on the wrong side of history. Demons have the same aim as their leader, to deceive men and women, thus luring them away from God and to their eternal destruction. They also aim to render Christian believers ineffective in their mission to tell others the good news about Jesus Christ. They are saboteurs, wanting to disrupt, damage, and ideally destroy any plans we might have to point people to Jesus. Put yourself in a demon's metaphorical shoes for a second, and you'll be able to come up with the sorts of tactics they typically employ. What would you do if you wanted to discredit or undermine the witness of a Christian believer?
Nuclear bomb.
I think I'd be looking for habitual weaknesses. Maybe lust or greed or pride would be a good place to start. And then I'd set up some temptations in those areas, especially when the person is feeling tired or self-pitying. And then, when they've hopefully given in to that temptation, I'd do everything I could to make sure other people know about it.
Wow.
Okay. So, yeah, I think maybe we can just kind of go back over what we just read/listened to. Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. Talks about how Mark's gospel is kind of a good starter gospel. It's not really related to demons, but it's kind of interesting.
I wouldn't know if I'd
cool.
put Mark as one of the first ones. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are good ones to start if you were to like read the early Bible, but for the first time at least. Right. I don't know. I
think Matthew is one that, like, out of the four gospels, Matthew or Luke are the ones that people often point to. But I think
my first shot
is a cool case.
Usually Luke.
Mark.
You know what? Mark sucked.
Hey,
Mark's the worst gospel out there. I'll say it.
He's a little abrupt.
I don't like. Yeah, his writing style is definitely different.
Yeah,
he is very.
I think it has something different.
Quick to the point. Yeah. I found it I find it interesting. It was like kind of earlier in it how he put definitely demons and angels are who fell. Demons are angels who fell with Satan, who was, of course, an angel himself. That's a little too definite for me. I feel like there's more room for demons, personally.
I was just looking into this the other day, but I'm pretty sure there's like a biblical reference that talks about
that. Well,
the fall of Satan. I can't remember
in the fall of Satan,
it is.
It's I want to say it should be in Genesis. I believe it's somewhere in there.
Yeah,
it's one of the Old Testament books, and I have read it, and it is interesting, but it's also one of those things where it's like it's hard to know if it was probably a vision that was written down, and of course we believe it was enlightened and written down by God through that person who wrote it. But for me, I think that also isn't like that's it. Like they're only angels, because that would be, for me personally, I think that's kind of questionable if there's that many angels falling. I think God would fix that, but maybe not. Maybe God. I do think that there are some. I think that's very clear, but personally, I think wish we can disagree with this. I don't care. Personally, I think there are demons that were fallen angels who fell with Satan, but I think there's too many demons and spirits and stuff like that for it to be the only thing. Like if we have evil spirits and stuff, those, and we can assume those are probably demons.
Yeah.
Is that an evil spirit angel? But if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would kind of align with the more traditional view that demons are fallen angels.
Yeah.
And I mean, because angels are spiritual beings, so like, I mean, it makes sense that spiritual or
Yeah.
evil spirits are demons or angels, or, fallen angels, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I would align more with that view.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, the verse he quoted was interesting, and at the very end it says that like Jesus was casting out demons and all this, and at the very end it says that he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him.
Yeah.
It's interesting that obviously Jesus speaks about demons, and Jesus was aware of the reality of demons, and then also the demons were aware of the reality of Jesus. Like they were
Right.
like, this guy, this is, it's the Son of God. He's not. We can't just mess around with this guy. So
Yeah, I think it is very interesting that Jesus is feared by demons. I think that's pretty clear and evident in all of the Gospels that he is, when he comes up to a demon, they recognize him very quickly
Yeah.
as God. Not just like someone who has God in him, like say, was it Joseph who split the sea? Was it who split the sea?
Moses.
Moses split the sea. Joseph, what did Joseph do?
Joseph was the guy that got sold into slavery, and then
What a loser.
yeah,
Going to slavery and stuff. Moses,
against his will.
Moses had like God's power in him, but he wasn't God. But I feel like with Jesus, it was pretty evident that he was being recognized. Also, my voice is cracky tonight. I'm sorry. It's late. Daddy needs to go to bed. Daddy usually goes to bed right now, and I'm a little grumpy.
Started the podcast late.
We started the podcast late today, and now we're listening to Demon.
Yeah.
I do think it is very interesting that that Jesus was being recognized. I think that's a really cool point. He also kind of went into a little bit as we were listening of what demons would do and what their job is, I guess. He said, put yourself in a demon's metaphorical shoes for a second. You'd be able to come up with the sort of tactics they typically employ. What would you do if you wanted to discredit and undermine the witness of a Christian believer? I think I'd be looking for habitual weakness, maybe lust or greed or pride. I would be a good place to start, and then I'd set up temptations in those areas. Do demons do that?
Oh well, I mean, I would say so. Yeah, they try and tempt and put as many stumbling blocks as they can in the way of believers and even believers who are being witnessed to.
Like how? Like in what circumstances would that be?
I mean, I think
could you say you've experienced demons?
I think it's a spiritual thing, that in the same way that angels can minister to people, like we see in the Old Testament and some of the New Testament. I would say that demons can do the same thing. Like they have the same power of being able to somehow connect or reach people on Earth. And C.S. Lewis has a book called The Screw Tape Letters that talks a lot. Well, basically, it's from the point of view of a head demon writing to the lower demon who's trying to tempt this guy and get him to renounce God. And basically, it's kind of trying to get into the mind of a demon and how demons. Obviously, it's not perfectly biblical, but it draws from the Bible and a biblical understanding of demons. But it's kind of about how like what the tactics that demons use to tempt people. It was actually a really interesting book, so I would recommend it.
Okay. But yeah, because for me, it's like for spiritual warfare, I can understand, but I also would argue a lot of our spiritual warfare is from ourselves.
Yeah.
I think quoting Andrew again, Andrew Aber, he once was talking about the Holy Spirit and our ability to deal with sin, and he named one he was calling it, I think the word he was using was the accuser, which is like the inside of us, the sinful part of us that is accusing ourselves of being an awful Christian because we're sinful, or an awful person because we're doing this. And I also think that a lot of the choices that we make are just our natural sin, especially with like lust or, you know, greed. Or I do think demons can do those things and they can cause those things, but I think it's kind of a slippery slope to blame all of that on demons when some of it is just our sinful brokenness.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that that's kind of where I'm kind of like, I think it should be said that yes, they can do that,
right?
But also
we're not blameless in that.
Yeah. I think it can kind of put it where humans were just constantly being attacked by demons, which, I mean, Adam and Eve were.
Yeah, they're tempted by Satan.
Tempted by Satan, which would make him a demon. But I don't know. I think, especially here in the Bible Belt, we see a lot of demons being like that term demon being like, it's a demon, you know, the mark of the beast.
Thrown around. Yeah, it's like, oh, you got, you know, mental health issues. It must be demon. You're possessed by a demon. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
So I want to make it.
I think that, I don't know where what the hierarchy system of Satan and the demons are, but because who knows? But like,
I'm sure some do. You know, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a. You think there's a system?
We're gonna find it. We'll find a demon to interview him.
Yeah,
that would be a crazy episode.
He's like, yeah, he's got really deep voice.
He's got like 20 voices.
Yeah, I work like 40 hours a week.
This dude is a demon at night. Let me tell you, it's like a 7-Eleven worker.
Yeah. Oh man.
He goes crazy in the weekend. Let me tell you, he works 9 to 5 every other day, but on the weekend he goes crazy.
Yep. It's his part-time job.
It's his part-time job. But I mean, I do agree. Like, and I think there are some places where demons are evidently working against us spiritually, and I think that's very clear when you see it.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to make sure that it was kind of said that I think you shouldn't blame demons for everything.
Oh,
and remember that.
I mean, you can't, you know, like, I don't know, go rob a store and be like, oh, a demon tempted me and made me do it. No,
yeah.
I like, and just because the devil or like a demon like tempts you or causes you to stumble, you're still at fault because you gave into that temptation, you know?
Right.
And Jesus was tempted by Satan and he didn't give in, you know? And then that's obviously that's the standard that we'll never live up to. And by the grace of God, we don't have to live up to it.
Right.
But that's what we're still responsible for. Those temptations and those shortcomings.
Yeah.
So,
which maybe he talks about. We haven't finished the article. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little quick, but at the halfway point, I'm liking it, but I think there are some things that could be clarified, which maybe Barry here will. So,
just let Barry cook.
All right, let's see what you got.
Some cooking.
Let's let you cook, Barry.
There's nothing like the exposure of hypocrisy to render a Christian spiritually ineffective and discredit his or her message. That said, it's worth remembering that demons have the same limitations as their leader. Although it's clear from Scripture they're more powerful and wily than human beings, they're not omniscient or omnipotent or anywhere near as powerful as God is.
Back.
You can see that in Mark, where
Amen.
Jesus cast them out with a word.
Yes, sir.
And will not permit them to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting question that arises from Mark chapter 1. Why does Jesus keep the demons from speaking? Well, because although the demons know very well who he is, their way of working is to take the truth and twist it to their own ends. So although demons are powerful, they have the power to oppress human beings, they're not that powerful. That's why those who are indwelt by Christ's Spirit, as all genuine believers are, cannot be demon-possessed, as some in Mark's Gospel are. As it says in 1 John chapter 4, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. But We can still be tempted by demonic influences, just as Jesus was tempted by Satan, and just as Peter was tempted to deny Jesus. That latter case ought to make us think soberly about our own vulnerability to these spiritual forces, to be watchful and prayerful, so that we don't fall into temptation ourselves. Another warning worth bearing in mind is that demonic temptations and influences rarely come to us as they are presented in horror movies. Demons are clever enough to know that their schemes are more likely to succeed if they present themselves and their temptations as good and pure and with your best interests at heart. So be on guard. Mark's Gospel and the rest of the New Testament is quite unapologetic about the reality and danger of demonic spirits. But at the same time, let's remember that when we do fall into temptation, we can repent and come to Christ. He rejoices to embrace us and restore us, just as he did Peter.
Wow. He left a good 30 seconds of
I'm
silence.
Barry Cooper, and this has been Simply Put, a podcast from...
Oh, sorry, Barry, for using your podcast. We'll link you in there.
This is some weird, like meta. Like we got a podcast with.
I will say though, I kind of like this setup though. Like I feel like we can bring up different topics very easily now in the setup. Like if we're just sitting down and listening to
for sure
a little article on Scientology, or we can kind of give our points on it. I don't think it's as good as having an actual believer of that coming onto the show, but I think
it could be
interesting.
A good, like every once in a while thing. Like we can.
Yeah, not every episode, but
because that would just be, what's the point of doing a podcast at that point,
But if we can find a cool article that's kind of crazy, we can talk about it. And I like that idea.
Yeah,
so, what did you? He kind of touched on it a little bit with they rarely show themselves.
I think that I like the point that he made about how demons won't present themselves as they do in Hollywood or in movies, and it won't be this, you'll see stuff floating through the air and all this crazy stuff. Not to say that they can't do that. I mean, maybe they can, but for one, what do most people do whenever they see stuff floating through the air? They, get down on their knees and start praying. You know what I mean? So like, isn't that the opposite of what demons would want them to do? So why would they lead somebody to do that? And then, so, and I like what he said about they'll use things that seem good and like harmless that could even bring some benefit.
Yeah.
And in order to tempt you, like, oh, if I mean, this is extreme, but if I rob this store, I'll get some money, or whatever, and like you begin to kind of justify it in your own mind. And
but is that you justify? Like I'm still kind of a foggy line of your sin and like how would a demon influence you to do that?
I mean, it's like it's an outside. Well,
it'd have to be an outside.
Yeah, an outside force
influence
that's kind of urging you and kind of pushing you into a specific direction. And I mean, the Bible talks about resisting that and being on guard and watching. So obviously we can. It's not this all-powerful force that we can't resist, but I don't think that ultimately the decision is yours. I mean, it's nothing. You can't be forced to do a sin by a demon.
Yeah, which I do like. He did talk about we can still be tempted by demonic influences just as Jesus was tempted by Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. Like we are tempted, and I still think it's just, I think there is more to be said about that line, and it's hard for me to fully understand it quite yet, because there's our sin, and then there's sin, and then there's demonic sin and influence, and there's forgivable sin and unforgivable sin. Like sin is, and the second episode of this show was me talking about sin a little bit.
Yeah.
And I still am it's just very multiple layers to it, and it's kind of hard to follow sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misinformation about it, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. I think it's a great article. I'm not dogging on it whatsoever.
No, yeah.
I just want. I wish I knew more so I could explain it better.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are demons that will tempt you, and I do think there are demonic forces that will attack you spiritually. I also think that we are protected, and obviously he says like if you've been saved. I think where was the verse he used? Where was it?
Oh, 1 John chapter 4.
He who is in you is greater than he who is in the world.
Yeah. So I mean, we believe that people who are Christians, it means that they were born again by the Holy Spirit, and they have the Holy Spirit living inside of them. So that's what that verse means.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Good job, Barry Cooper.
Yeah.
You have a very hot voice.
Barry, if you're listening to this,
Barry,
I like your accent.
you have a great accent. And Barry, I want you to know that you are welcome to the show anytime.
Yeah.
And if me saying did you have a hot voice makes you uncomfortable, just know that I am a straight male, and I am going to be married by the time this comes out, I think.
We like to get close here on Cosmic Complexity.
But not that close.
Me and Grayson we're touching these.
We're basically docking right now. Is that what it's called?
Docking?
Is it docking or is it?
I don't think that's what we're doing though.
What is the thing the Mormons do?
Yeah, it's soaking.
Soaking.
We're not. Hey! I just want to put this out there. We're not soaking right now. Right?
There's no camera.
I don't know.
You can't see us. You can't tell we're docking or soaking right now whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if we were, you wouldn't know. Anyways, so on with the show.
Yeah. But
it was great. I thought it was a great article.
And I think that really, I always want to go back to what Scripture says, because that's ultimately like where we get our information and our knowledge from ultimately. And I think that Scripture doesn't really talk much about demonic influence when it comes to temptation, but it does talk, like, say that Satan has a lot of, like, the devil has a lot of power in temptation, and like you said, the accuser.
Mm-hmm.
Satan's often referred to as the accuser because he'll accuse you of your guilt and your sin, and make you think that you're too evil to be saved, and God can't save a person like you, and he'll accuse you. And then Jesus refers to Satan. He describes him as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. So I think that he's out there, and he's not gonna, like, not that he couldn't, but for the most part, Satan's not gonna try and possess you or torment you with hauntings or whatever. But
right,
it'll be more of like a very subtle, like, just things that may seem even good, like, in the moment.
You see, I think one of the reasons I'm so cautious with the topic of demons and what is defining a demon is I grew up with my family, and they were very Bible beating, very religious, in a sense that they thought the world was ending a good 10 years ago. Fun fact, it's not ended. We're still here.
I thought it was going to happen on the solar eclipse, to be honest with you.
I could have sworn it was happening today. I mean, all the lines added up. God told me, but I guess he lied. So I'm just kidding. That was a joke. God did not tell me that this morning.
No, yeah.
But
God can't lie.
I grew up around a family and that was very, very, very religious. We couldn't curse. We had to say darn and dang. And if we even said crap, we would get in trouble. And I was homeschooled, and I grew up around the idea of, like, that's a demon right there. That demon just came out there, demon. And that was what I heard often. Like, I remember one time the attic door, like, fell, and my dad said it was a demon. And I love you, Dad, but I don't think that was a demon. I think the attic door fell. So,
yeah.
And we also, there's a couple of things that would, like, every now and then, and, my mom would be like, the demonic forces are attacking us right now. And maybe they were, but as a 10-year-old child, I was like, I don't know if that was a demon.
Yeah.
I think it was just the world.
And yeah, and it's also I think that as Christians, we don't have anything to fear when it comes to demons. Like
Yeah.
we have, and he even mentions it in the article, like whatever demons do have power, but the power that they have is insignificant compared to
Mm-hmm.
the power of God.
Right. And I don't know. My family seemed to be very fearing of demons, and I never really understood that. But I I just kind of, I guess I think that would explain more so why I'm kind of, is that a demon though? Is that a thing? Because I just,
Yeah,
I've
you
kind
just
of
you kind of have this
reverse
right.
thought about it, where it's instead of, I'm not, I'm like, and we've talked about cryptids, and I've mentioned how I think those are definitely, at least in my eyes, demons, and there's definitely evidence of me thinking like demons are creatures that exist. And I do think that demons are around now. I think that we have demons in this world quite often. And I don't know if I've talked about this before on this podcast, but I'll make sure to remember after this. I was talking to a pastor about demons and about cryptids and aliens and these creatures that appear and why demons are so prominent in other countries and spiritual experiences are so prominent. And he mentioned, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Trent, that when a demon shows itself to us, that just proves what we believe.
Mm-hmm.
If a demonic entity was to appear before me and you, we would be like, the God we believe is true. You are proving that, and we also believe we're protected for this God. Like, this God is saving us because he loves us and he's accepted us, and we fully believe that even if you kill us, you will lose. And they are aware of that. They recognize God in us just as they recognized God in Jesus. They see that Holy Spirit in us. And he mentioned that, if a demon was to appear here in America, where Christianity and our faith is quite popular, it would actually help Christians in their faith if they were caught on videos, if it was very evident, and there was a lot of evidence of it. It would only further prove Jesus and God's existence.
Or even for like an atheist, if you're an atheist and you see a demon, then you're probably not gonna be an atheist anymore.
Yeah. Or you have an interaction with Satan, like you would very quickly realize, oh, this is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Which even Satan can be very, appearing to be good, and I think that is a conversation to be had another time. Satan appearing to be happy in the same way of sin appearing to be a happy thing. I want to jerk off because I'm excited. I want to eat this because I'm excited. I want to drink all the time because it's fun. But the more you sin, the more you realize how awful it is and how awful you are. And I'm not saying you're awful because you sin. I'm saying we're all awful by nature. Like, just as you continue to do this sinful thing, at least under the umbrella that God has given us, as a Christian, I believe when I sin, often I'm miserable and unhappy. This is from personal experience. This is me projecting on you. Like, I'm fully confident to say that when I actively sin, I actively feel like shit.
Yeah.
He also talked about how when demons appear here, it's evidence for us, but that's why we see them more prominent in other countries like Mexico and China and these major companies, or not companies, sorry, major countries where demonic entities and spirits and the dead are worshipped.
Yeah.
We see that in almost every culture, that, and there's nothing like, not digging on these cultures, but for them to see a spirit or an entity or demon, that's actually good for their culture because that's what they believe.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They believe whatever you want, but that's why we see demons more prominently there than here, because we're not as welcoming to those spirits.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? He also, and I think that kind of pairs well with the stories of spirits here and their locations. We have locations in America where you can go and find spirits. And I do think that is true, and I do think those are actual locations because those are places where we're welcoming those demons. We're okay with them existing there. And I really do think we should do a sub-series where we go to those places. Because if the budget gets to the point where we could, I would love a Cosmic Complexity road trip series where we go and find these places. And because I mean, like, I'm not fearing demons. I believe they're real, and I think that would be an interesting interaction. Because I do think spirits will recognize that we have something. And I'm curious to see what they would do. But I do think demons and spirits are very actively around and still here. And I do think that they still are influencing people and things. I don't know if it's on a national level or a political level. I think a lot of people tend to kind of jump the gun to that straight off the bat. But yeah, I do think people can get possessed. I do think demons can be here and people can interact with them. But I don't know. What do you think, Trent? What do you think of that? I've told you this before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of adds to kind of the strategy and the scheming behind Satan and the demons.
Yeah.
They have a strategy and a plan.
And
like
understanding.
They're not coming into our modern westernized culture where we're like, oh, I independent and nothing can harm me. I'm invincible sort of mindset, and they're not coming in here and showing us how frail and fragile and weak we are.
Right.
They're coming in and boosting our egos, and our pride, and using that against us instead of coming in and possessing a bunch of people or like tormenting us, because obviously that's just gonna lead more people in kind of the right direction, which is the opposite of what they would want to do. So it is interesting to think about, and because I've had that thought, like, why do you always hear about these demonic things in other countries, but like you never see it? Well, that's kind of why, because they're not wanting to give up their really, sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
We are
our pride and our.
And I will say, I have had interactions with what I believe to be demons, and I've hinted at it a couple of times where I've interacted and I've saved the stories, and I think this is a great episode to share those stories.
Yeah.
And I do want to preface, like, I did live in a home where my parents were actively talking about demons and fearing demons, and that idea of a demon and a spirit was not a uncommon thing for me, and it was almost welcomed in an odd way because it was so actively talked about in my home. Like, not we would love to see a spirit come into this home, but more so we were fearing them so often.
You used to dwell on
that we dwelled on it spiritually, that it came to the point where if a demon were to attack, we would be a prime real estate for that. Because if a demon were to attack someone who like isn't really constantly thinking about them, they'd be like, oh, that's a demon, all right, fuck off, and then the demon would leave. But for us, like, we were talking about them all the time. We were fearing them all the time. If we were to see a demon, it would scare us. It would startle us. It wouldn't shake our faith in the sense that we would fall farther away from Christ, but it would shake our faith in the way that we would be unsettled, uncomfortable, and harmed in that way. And trying to think of the timeline here of both of these stories. I've heard a couple of stories from other people. I'm not going to share those. My parents have told me several, but again, like I said, their definition of demon and my definition of demon are very different.
Yeah.
I'll start with this one. I used to live in this big house, and a lot of my early YouTube videos that are all unlisted and you'll never see, hopefully, are in that house. And there was this little outdoor area. It was kind of a storage shed. It was just a concrete room. There's no tables, no counters, no sinks, no plumbing. It was just electricity, lights. It could have very well have been made into a house if they wanted it to, but they never made it into. They just used it for storage because I have 5 siblings besides myself, so we needed it.
Right.
But we put a couch in there one time, which was like this little couch, and I would call my fiance, now my not fiance, I would call her on the phone and we'd FaceTime and we'd talk. And we would usually talk pretty late into the night, and I would just sit on this couch and talk to her because, again, I had 5 siblings, so I wanted a little privacy and it was a good spot to go. And I would just chill and sit on the couch. So, knowing my fiance, I was 14 or 15 in this time. I was at least 14. And Artemis is she's trying to cuddle with us. I would just sit on there and FaceTime her and talk her so she would see my face. So my fiance was present for this. And at least in the sense of a digital, like she saw my reaction to it. But I was sitting there talking to her, and we were, oddly enough, talking about faith. We were talking about our struggles and our testimonies and where we had come, how we come to this point, why we believe it, and I was guiding her in her faith and, you know, encouraging her in her faith. It was a very God-driven conversation. And I do think that is an important note, is that it was not only a conversation about God, but it was a conversation about God conquering our own struggles and our insecurities, our own problems, and feeling that comfort in that, in Christ saving us. And it was a great conversation. And I was in the middle of a sentence, and my door to the outside of that little room, it was only one door, one way in, one way out, and there was a little window. And the door used to be sealed, but it broke due to weather. And so there was about a 1-inch clearance that was enough to, sorry, my cat's jingling around. It was enough for you to put your hand under it and slide it around if you wanted to. Squirrels would run in there, stuff like that. So it was like a spot that I was facing directly when I was sitting on the couch. So I was looking directly at this door. And I wasn't staring at that opening or anything. I was just kind of lazily looking around as I talked. And I was in the middle of a sentence. Am I going to kick you out? Hold on. Time out. Trent babble, so I don't have to cut it out.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing great. Keep it up.
Yeah. I think Grayson has told me this story before, so it's interesting to hear it again. Because it's been a while since he's talked about it, so I'm kind of curious to see what all I remember.
I don't think I've shared it with this much detail to you either.
Yeah, no, it was kind of more just like, oh yeah,
I was just
we
trying
were
to scare
talking,
you.
and yeah, he was just trying to freak me out a little. Honestly,
It's a freaky story.
I'm already freaked out.
Well, I mean, it is, because we were sitting there talking about Christ and God and demons and Satan and temptation and falling, and I'm sitting here and I'm on this little couch alone. Jenny's on the phone with me, and I look down randomly. I just happen to be glancing at the door, and I see what I can only describe as a black hand, like pitch black, not like a black person's hand, but a visible 5 fingers, and it was misty and smoky, kind of, and it slid under the door. But the smoke, as it slid under the door, hit a barrier and went up. Like straight barrier, not like a rounded barrier, but like it was like it tried to enter and it was stopped by a force. It was weird. It really was an odd. I'm still like, and this is a good 6 or 8 years ago now, but I do remember it because it freaked me out. It was weird. It wasn't just like a hand going like under the door. It was definitely like something tried to come in and was stopped.
Wow.
It was weird. It was really, really weird. And I stopped speaking and my face turned flush white because I was terrified.
Yeah.
And Janie was like, my fiance, she was like, what is it? What did you see? Are you okay? Like, she was actively like, oh, he's freaking out. Like, what? And she'd never seen me freak out like that. She was like, what's wrong? And I mean, you know me, I don't really freak out often. And I don't get that scared. And she was like, what is it? And I was like, I don't know. I think I saw something. And I described to her what I saw. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And I told her I was going to call her back. And I immediately went outside and I turned on my flashlight and I looked throughout all of my yard.
Yeah.
I looked all around in the area near. I looked in the trees to see if it was an animal or something, if a cat maybe. But again, like I'm very confident to say that it was misty and it was flowy and it hit a barrier. Like it wasn't a physical thing. It was a weird spiritual something. And it, to me, that felt like a spiritual demonic attack. Like, to me, it felt like it was a force that did make an attempt and failed.
Yeah.
Because it was stopped by something. And I do think that is like, you know, I think C.S. Lewis is the one who kind of portrayed the idea of angels and demons are constantly fighting around us. And to me, that's what it appeared to be in a physical sense that only I could see was that reaction. Yeah. And I'm sure on a spiritual level, it was a lot more force and power behind it. But to me, it was just kind of like a little, but it still freaked me out. It was still enough for me to be like, oh, what is it? Because it was weird. It was just a weird, whatever, even if it wasn't a demon, I would still say it was most likely a spirit that I saw. And shadowy spirits are often described by many people as seen. Like there's a lot of people who describe like shadowy figures and people and things. Yeah. So it may have well have been a spirit trying to also come towards me. But I do think demons and spirits are very similar and they're probably in the same genre in my head. Yeah. But it freaked me out. It was weird. And I never told my family. I didn't tell. Janie was the only one I told that day. What? I didn't go inside and was like, Mom. No, I was freaked out, but I also was oddly comforted because I knew that it was something stopped it. Right. And that made me feel even more comfortable. And that's probably why I went outside in the first place, because I was like, because you knew. I knew that I was protected by some entity that I can't see. And yeah, it was a interesting interaction. And I do think the timing is important. Again, like we were talking about Christ, we were talking about God and how much he has helped us and influenced us. And I do think that is a important detail. Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. And what is, did you kind of talk about it with Janie after that, or a lot after that, or did y'all just kind of not really talk about it after? I mean, I did told her what it was when it happened. Yeah. And I called her back after and was like, yeah, I couldn't find it. I don't know what it was. I looked everywhere and I don't know. And she told me, I think verbatim, she was like, stop. Shut up. Don't tell me, you're going to freak me out. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And like, she does get freaked out by that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, fair enough. Yeah. And she was very clearly, oh man, I burned my hairs when I was making tacos earlier. It's Cinco de Mayo today, and I burned my hand making tacos. Yeah, make some tacos. Yeah, but I described it to her and she didn't like it. She didn't like it. She didn't like how serious I was. And I think it also should say something about my story that she was kind of freaking out too, because she knew you weren't just messing with her. Yeah, I wasn't just making it up. I was definitely fearing something. And I do think that interaction is another reason why I'm so confident to say that spirits and ghosts are real. Because I do think I have seen a spirit or a ghost of some sort.
Yeah.
And it was freaky and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I also crave to see another in a weird way.
Oh.
In a sense that it would prove further what I believe. And I do think that is kind of why I love ghosts so much, is because when I see different ghost hunters, like actual ones, and their interactions with spirits, to me that is real. Just as real as Christ is. That is real. Because if Christ is real, so is the demons that he is, destroying and silencing. And I don't think that is a bad thing to acknowledge. I think if you acknowledge Christ, then you are actively also acknowledging demons in that sense.
Yeah. Be as Christ acknowledged demons, as this article mentioned.
As Barry Cooper so happily said.
Yeah. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry. Love you, Barry. Love you and your sexy hot voice. Barry's not coming
British,
on the show.
He's probably gonna be scared off.
You heard that. I'm sorry, Barry.
I don't even know if this podcast will reach
Barry.
Like
is
Barry.
Is it because I said fuck Barry? Is that it? I didn't say fuck Barry.
I mean,
just now I said it twice, but not. There's a comma. It's not. It's not the same word.
Commas save lives.
Yeah, Barry.
So.
And a lot of fucks.
I don't know if you knew that, Barry, but
if you didn't know it, whenever you use the word fuck, a comma is incredibly important.
Yes. I mean, unless you don't need a comma, you might not. Whatever. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Well, if you say fuck mothers, or say fuck
Barry.
mom, if you say fuck mom and you don't put a comma,
scoundrel.
You're saying you want someone to fuck your mom, which is not okay. But if you say fuck comma mom, you're saying fuck my mom. Like, I don't like my mom.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Man, that was
Anyways, we went from talking about demons to talking about commas and fuck.
No, one thing I did want to say is I think that there are two kind of different views whenever it comes to angels and demons and God and all this. One is that the angels and demons are constantly at war, and it's this battle back and forth, trying to win as many souls as they can. And then the other is that God is already won, and he's already secured his people, and the demons are just trying to do they're just grasping at straws. They're trying to do every possible thing they can do to thwart God's plans, but ultimately they won't. Like, the battle's already won, and they're just trying to do. I mean, they're desperately trying to do every last resort to thwart God's plans, and that's kind of the view that I align with more. Is that we don't have to worry about this battle. That's the spiritual battle that's going on. Really, sure, it is a battle, but the true battle has already been won, and these little battles are just us trying to pursue holiness and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's necessarily good to think about it as this back and forth sort of war between angels and demons, good and bad, and so it's kind of a thought that I had.
Yeah.
So,
which that was one of I have two interactions.
Yeah,
what I believe to be demons.
You might have told me that one before, but there's another one that you told me before that is the one that I was thinking.
Yeah, I have two. And I think the thing about these two stories that make it so polarizing to me is that they both happened while Jenny was somewhat present. And they both were during or after a conversation about Christ between us and about our struggles in faith and pursuing that faith and actively fighting for our faith with each other. Like not like she was against being a Christian, or I was against Christian, but more so encouraging each other in our faith.
Right.
And same thing, late night conversation. But this go around, I was in my bedroom. This is a little more later in the years. I was a junior or senior in high school. I was living alone in my bedroom at this point. I wasn't sharing a bedroom with anybody, so I actually had privacy. And we were FaceTiming. And we did that cute thing that couples do, where she would fall asleep on the phone and I would just keep her there and watch her creepily, you know? As couples do, just staring at her. And I was just chilling. And I think I looked away a little bit, and she would shuffle around every now and then. And I heard ruffling and moving, but she hadn't moved. And to give you kind of an idea, it was on FaceTime, and it was my iPhone, and she had it sideways. So I could see her face, and I'd say probably her upper chest from what collarbones, and her face. And she was asleep, and her hair was kind of everywhere, and there's some pillows and stuff. But it wasn't much space for anything. And I heard her move around, and I looked over, and she hadn't moved. And I just see this. What the only way I can describe it is a horn. Is the closest thing I could describe it, or like a dinosaur tail, like a toy dinosaur tail that's pointed sharply up, but a little bit thicker, and it was brownish, horn colored. It looked like a horn, and it was right by her face, and it just slid into frame, and I immediately sensed something was off. And I cannot explain that feeling to you. I was uneasy by it. It made me uncomfortable. It made me not I didn't like it. I didn't like what I was looking at. I didn't like where it was. I didn't like the feeling it was giving me, the vibe it was giving me. And I cannot explain that. Just in my gut, I didn't like it. Which is weird, because if something slides in when your girlfriend is sleeping on a FaceTime, you're like, oh, she just moved something over, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But it was different. It was like an intentional. It was like someone outside of the frame pushed something into the frame.
Yeah.
And it was
it wasn't her that shuffled or something.
No, because she didn't move, and it makes me uncomfortable now, because I think the thing that I really, really, really don't like about it was that it was almost a threat to my fiance. To me, it felt like I could do anything to her, and that was, I think that was a spiritual attack on me and not her. And I'll explain why. But to me, it felt like a threat to her and her well-being and her safety.
Right.
And that makes me uncomfortable and me uneasy. And I was just sitting here just staring at this thing. And I was staring at it. I had that gut feeling that I didn't like it, and I was like, what is this thing that I'm looking at? And I was hoping that it would move away and that it would reveal more to it, and it was just something, and I was just overthinking it.
Right.
And it never did. It just sat there. It stopped moving completely, just sat in frame, perfectly where I could see it, right by her face. And I got to the point where I was staring at it, and it wasn't moving, and she wasn't moving. It was perfectly still, and I was like, I have to know what this is, or I'm gonna lose it. And I was like, if I just wake up Janie, she'll tell me what it is.
Yeah.
And even though I had that gut feeling, I didn't screenshot it or anything, because I just thought I was overthinking it. Yeah. And then I was just freaking out over nothing.
It'd be crazy if you get a screenshot though.
I should have. I regret that to this day. I did draw it immediately after.
Really?
I have a picture and I can find it somewhere.
Yeah.
But I did save a record and a time and a date and a picture of it, because I was like, I distinctly remember it. And So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to know what this is. And Janie had been asleep for a while. And I just told her, hey, Janie, hey, Janie, hey, Janie. And I like finally woke her up. And it took me a little bit. And she kind of started to rustle a little bit. And I was like, Janie, wake up. And while she was rustling and kind of waking up a little bit, it wasn't moving. And so I was like, okay, it's still there. And literally right as she opened her eyes, like as soon as they were opening up, it quickly was out of frame.
Wow.
Like it got pulled back from where, like the same way it came in, came out. Like someone pushed it in, pulled it out.
That's weird.
And then I was like, okay, that's even weirder. That it moved as soon as she woke up. Like not when she moved her arms, it was when she opened her eyes. Like she didn't move her arms or body or anything. She didn't shuffle around her. She was kind of like rustling a little bit, but it wasn't enough to like fully pull something out of the frame.
Yeah.
It was only when her eyes opened. And she again saw that fearful look in my eyes and in my voice and my kind of like, oh my God, what did I just see?
Yeah.
And frantically, I was like, what is in your bed? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no. What is in your bed? Look around your bed right now. What is right next to you? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, a dinosaur tail, a sharp horn, something in your bed. Where is it? And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, is there anything in your room? Is there anything that could be like remotely close to that I'm like just seeing in your bed? And she was like, there's not. And she got up, she turned her lights on because she could tell I was freaking out.
Yeah.
And she looked all in her room and found nothing that resembled that whatsoever. There was nothing.
That's weird.
And like, again, it was solid. It wasn't her hair. It was a solid thing. It didn't move. It just stayed in frame. And it moved out very quickly. And she was so freaked out by it that she didn't even sleep in that room that night. She went and I think she slept. She like made a little bed in her parents' room.
Wow. Because
she was uneasy that I'd seen something in her room. And fair enough.
Yeah.
Because I had trouble sleeping that night too. Because I was like, what was that?
It was weird.
And yeah, and again, I did sense that feeling of uneasiness from it, and I think what made it different than that first story is that it was out of my control.
Yeah,
and I didn't like that.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's one thing, some kind of physical harm to you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can kind of get through that, but as well as you can. But it's different if it's somebody that you care about. So yeah, it's crazy. Have you and Janie like talked about that stuff?
No, because it would scare her.
Since
she would freak out if I told her about it again.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
If we only told her once, and
it was when it happened. Both instances, she is so sensitive to those kind of things.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, especially I
mean, it would freak me out. It still kind of freaks me out now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the importance of both of those stories that to me is interesting is that both were conversations between me and my fiance, who I plan on making my life partner, and who we both are very strong in our faith and we love the good Lord, and we both actively are trying to go against what Satan wants, what the demons want. And I think that it is interesting that she was present in both of those instances, because I can confidently say those are the only two that I can really remember.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, I think that was the demon of some sort.
Yeah.
And she was there for both of those, and I think that's really weird. But and I also think it was weird that it was times where we were talking about spiritual experiences, and
yeah,
it's interesting. Both stories are interesting, and I do have a ghost story. I think maybe. But I'll save that for a ghost episode.
Yeah.
It's not much. Actually, no, it's so much. You're going to love the story. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's going to blow your mind.
Tune in.
Be sure to tune into that.
What what do we call them? Cosmic wanderers.
I think that was it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cosmic Wanderers. I mean, I like Cosmic Wanderers.
See you next time.
I think it rolls off the tongue pretty well.
Pretty good.
We'll
try
keep
it out
ball and parking
a couple
it.
times.
You know, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
But I will say we are about 6 minutes over. But I mean, I'm fine with this episode being a little long. We're not cutting anything. We don't cut stuff for you. We love you.
Yep.
We want you to hear everything. All right. But I will say I think we're good.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Once
as well
again,
as we can.
Yeah. I mean, the best of our knowledge, and I do think the parts about demons that the Bible doesn't fully explain or tell us, I think, is intentional. I think God leaves out things that are unimportant and that we don't need to know for a reason. The Bible isn't about demons. The Bible is about Jesus Christ, and I think that's very evident, very clear in the Bible.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn about demons, you can very easily. And I would not encourage seeking after demons and looking after demons. And I would not, hopefully you don't take that out of this episode. I was terrified both instances that I interacted with a demon, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And the good Lord protected me and protected my fiance in those instances, and I'm very thankful for that. And if you have experienced a demonic entity, I hope it went well. But I did want to specify that and clarify that. And I do think that whether you're a Christian, an atheist, a Scientologist, or, well, maybe not Scientologist. I think they believe that demons are just natural phenomenons.
Yeah.
Idiots. I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
Hey, whoa.
I'm joking. I'm joking. But I did want to specify that. And again, these are only our beliefs and what we believe. And if you hear us out, thank you. And if you found it silly or at least, very least interesting, thank you for listening this far. And new episode every Monday. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Me and Trent have been pumping them out once a week, and it's been great. And I think we're getting more and more comfortable. So do stick around, keep listening to us. We're going to try to get those intros a little bit smoother for you, and the sound quality, we're working on it week by week to make it better for you. But thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.